What's up guys, this is Willie. Welcome back to Three Pedal Devils. Today we're continuing the work on our customer 1966 Chevy C10. If you saw our previous video introing this project, we walked through all the different things that need work on it and what our customer wants done to it. In today's video we're going to start off with doing a couple of the first small projects on this thing. Let's roll the intro and then I'll show you what we're doing today. So the owner of this thing lives like 2 to 3 hours away, so it doesn't really make sense for him to come here all the time and, you know, see what we're looking at and okay us on the next project. So kind of the way we're running it is we've built out a spreadsheet with him with all the different info about the truck and all the different projects he wants to do to it. He's given us a pretty good sized list already of the different things we can get going on. I just wrote down some of the projects on a paper here so we can glance at it real quick and, you know, if we're looking for something to work on, just pick one off the sheet and go on and start doing it. So I think what I'm going to work on today is the trans shifter. So the linkages are all super loose as I showed in the last video. Can't really see now that I took the bench seat out, but the shifter would hit the bench seat in second and fourth gear. So I might try to pop this off and come up with a concept for how to offset the shifter a little bit so that you can shift into second and fourth without hitting the bench seat. So I'm going to set this camera down, get inside the cab here, and start taking some stuff apart and see what I can do with the shifter. So I got the shifter removed. See, there were just 2 holes through it, 2 bolts that held it to here. So what I'm going to do is try to make a bracket that spans from here, goes through the 2 original bolt hole locations, and then comes out through this notch here in the shifter, and then puts a new bolt pattern right here just a little bit in front to mount the shifter to, right about there. And then that'll give us that offset so that we have clearance to the bench seat. It's not super ideal, but it'll at least get us that shifter offset from where it currently was, get you that clearance. What I'm going to do is take some measurements of all this stuff here, draw up a little bracket, head over to my computer and model it up in CAD. And then what I'm going to do is 3D print it to mock it up, see how well it fits, and if that's even going to give us the proper clearance, or if it's too far offset and it's not going to, you know, feel right when you're shifting. But that 3D printed part can give us a good idea of whether that's kind of the right offset or the right location. And then from there we could go and, you know, laser cut it out of a 1/4 inch plate of steel or something like that and make the permanent solution. But the 3D printed one will be good for prototyping to see how well that works. Alrighty, so I think I got enough measurements of the existing interface to head over to the computer and start designing a little bracket for this thing. So let's get out of the truck, head up to our office above the bathroom, and get started. Alright, so I've got a quick bracket designed up. Took a little longer than expected because my computer was having some issues, but got it finished up. So now I'm going to export it as a different file format, load it into the 3D printing software, and then pop it over here and let it print while I work on something else. So let's jump into the computer and get going on that. Alright, so I got that 3D print started. That's kind of the beauty of 3D printing, is once you finish drawing up the design, which doesn't take very long, you hit go and then, you know, wait an hour, a couple hours depending on the size of the part, go work on something else, and, you know, you come back to a finished part that you can test out. Obviously I'm not going to use 3D printed parts in the end use application where something takes a load. I do use 3D printed parts for, you know, different brackets or housings or things that aren't taking load, but obviously for brackets where you're loading them back and forth a bunch of times, you would not want to use a 3D printed part regardless of what the internet says. I wouldn't trust them. So this is just a test fit, and then we'll make a steel bracket here later on if this one works out good. But guy just showed up. He's going to work on, well, not guy. Guy's the guy who owns this. This is a different guy.
Yeah, I think I was told the door handle and the window crank are either don't work or aren't working properly, so I'm going to dig into that.
Sounds good. See, they're super loose, and when we were rolling the windows up and down, they'd slip sometimes and like skip. So take the door cards off, look at what we got under there. And then this handle on the passenger side doesn't work from the inside, so Have to take a look at that. We got Matt in its natural habitat. God, I love this big rear window. So Matt's got the door panel off, and then we kind of figured out how this mechanism works, but not fully. And it seems like one of the arms is really bent to the side, so it's not hitting where it's supposed to. So now we're pulling the mechanism out because you can't adjust it while it's in there. Currently trying to do that. Everything's all connected with like pins on these link arms and not bolts, so trying to figure out how to take it apart to get it out of the door.
Window guide is in the way, so we can't just pull the whole thing out.
The window guide goes all the way down, and then this piece is on like a L-shaped bracket, and you can't just go past, so. Nice.
Perfect. Had to take the window guide out so I could like slip it behind, and then I had to take the actuator arm that turns it off too, but everything's pretty loose, so I think we just gotta like clean it up, tighten it up, and it should work again.
Eventually.
We figured out the problem. From the inside handle, this mechanism lifts like that, pushing on here, that then pulls that other hook out. But the problem is that hook doesn't come out far enough anymore due to wear and tear on the hinge here, and the pin is super loose.
So the little like pawl in there still engages the hook.
We're gonna pull this pin out, even though it's like permanently in there. We're just gonna bust it out. That way we can use our press and bend this flange down a little bit more so it pulls all the way out. And then we can clean up the pin and make it a nice tight fit again. That's the plan.
While Matt was working on the door hinge, I started crafting this beautiful peppermeat cheese 360. And I also took my printed part off the printer, so I'm gonna hop in the truck and try to install that. It's a little bit of a tight fit. So once my bracket was done printing here, Bo and I made up this steel spacer to go in between the bracket and the shifter mount. There's kind of some funky tabs coming off the side of it with a little notch on the sides that don't go down all the way, so we had to put that spacer in there so that the nuts could tighten up without just bending the heck out of the plastic. But just seeing the design of this thing and how little material there is in between the two parts of the bracket because of that sheet steel, still kind of nervous about how strong that would be. Max and Matt also agreed. While this looks like it would be pretty nice from a fitment standpoint, we're just too nervous about how little strength there is there. I could come over the top here with another little link and then maybe one down on the bottom, but it's just kind of a lot of messing around for maybe not the best design. I think if we are going to go with this route, I will have to stiffen that up somehow with a little linkage here and maybe like some stiffening on the side, or maybe just change up the design so that I can make it more of a billet piece rather than plate steel that's plasma cut. So what we were thinking we might do, we just got to get confirmation with the owner that he's okay if we do this, was we were going to cut the shifter down here and then make a kind of an angled cut or notch in both parts and then weld them back together so that this basically sits more like that. So it sits a little bit further forward and gets us the clearance we wanted without monkeying around too much with a different kind of bracket down here. And we don't really have the machining equipment to make this like a billet plate, so probably gonna try that angled lever and see what that looks like. But I think that'll be a pretty simple solution, and Bo should be able to weld that pretty easily once we grind the coating off. We'll probably pursue that in one of the next videos.
What I ended up doing is I pulled the pin out and I cut the way it worked is they've got them like all over these pins, and then they like smash the top of it to like flare it out. There's one right there too. So obviously we couldn't reuse the pin, so I cut that flared piece off, and then I drilled a hole into the pin and tapped it, and then bought a new bolt and washer, and then put it together, and that allowed me to tighten up the pin all together, so now nothing it shakes or moves or anything, and everything's lined up perfectly. And then on top of that, we just put some grease in areas that there's contact with each other, and so now the whole thing slides together, and Works like it's brand new. Also, the other issue was this tab here. For this back hook to open up, it relies on the front hook to push it open, and it wasn't bent over far enough. I don't know why, but I basically just took a hammer and bent it over until it was enough, and then it did crack a bit, but Bo put some weld in there and sealed it back up nice, so should be good to go.
Looking over here at the passenger side door panel, Matt and I finished putting this back together. We noticed that the splines on the mechanisms for the handle and the window crank were both really beat up. There's a set screw on both of them, and it seems like in the past they weren't slid on all the way down the spline, but the set screw was still tightened up, so it bent the teeth on the spline. So Matt and I went with some tiny little micro files and filed the spline back to straight so we could push these down all the way and get a nice tight gap on the door panel, and then the set screw holds way tighter as well. You can see there's still a little bit of slop just because of the lash and the spline design, but it's way tighter overall than it was before. The window crank, there's still some lash because of the mechanism inside the door, but as far as the crank on the little spindle, it's tightened up pretty good now. And this door handle was the one that previously wasn't working, but you can see now pops the door open real nice and easy, so passengers should be able to get in and out of the truck fairly easily for them. That should be a real nice upgrade. Alright, before somebody drops a comment roasting me about what I'm wearing, I came here straight from work. It's on a weekday, and I'm not going to be working on too much tonight. Just came to finish up recording this video tonight and pick up some Delrin stock that I'm going to be machining into some bushings for the shifter linkages on this truck, and didn't feel like changing into work clothes just for the sake of this video. But yeah, making a little bit of progress here on the truck. This is another little bit of a slower video as we get started with some of the smaller projects here and wait for parts to come in. But we've got a carb rebuild kit, spark plugs and wires on the way. We've got a disc brake conversion on the way. We've got new custom wheels for this thing on the way. We've got a new steering wheel installed. I'll do a little teaser here. Still wrapped in some foam, but we'll do a little steering wheel reveal in the next video once the adapter kit comes in. So if you like the look of this C10 and want to see us do some more work on it, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Come back and check out the rest of the 1966 Chevy C10 project. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you in the next one.